Hi everybody, this is the Baseball Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion, your host, the Hut, and welcome back to the Baseball Hut too. Hope you like this video and subscribe. As you know, the Mets fired Buck Showalter, their manager. Well, David Stearns fired him. He wasn't even on the job yet. And he was fired. I'll have another video on the Showalter firing and how the media is sort of complete total insanity. But Buck Showalter was fired. Unfortunately, this year was a disaster, and someone was to take the blame. And a lot of times, it's always the manager that takes the blame. We know that the players are at fault. We all know that. We know that the manager could have done a better job when it came to certain things. But the reality is the players did not play up to expectations. There were times I felt watching this team that they were going through the motions, and sometimes when your team is going through the motions, that is a reflection of the manager. And I complained quite a bit. I know a lot of people complained that he was not the right guy this year for this team. Obviously, the result wasn't there. The result was there last year. Make no mistake about it. And I thought he did an excellent job. They overachieved greatly last year. And looking back, I'm trying to figure out, did they underachieve this year? Did they underachieve this year, or was this the team they were supposed to be? They had older pitching staff in terms of Carrasco, Verlander, Scherzer, and obviously Quintana. And when you have an older staff, you're going to take a hit in terms of injuries, and they certainly took injuries. They didn't have Justin Verlander the first month. They lost Jose Quintana for half the season. And the guys that were performing behind them, McGill and David Peterson, did not live up to expectation, just to be respectable on the mound. But obviously, when these things happen, you have to sort of say, well, who's to blame? And obviously, Buck Showalter has now taken the blame for it. Obviously, it's a much more complicated situation. This is a major pitching issue that has to be addressed in the offseason. Now, Buck, there were times I felt he should have been much, much tougher on this group. I felt that I was thinking about this. If you don't know, Billy Martin was Buck Showalter's mentor as a manager. Buck loved Billy. And Billy was a guy he looked up to. And if you're old enough to remember, and even just based on reputation, if you've seen that documentary on MLB Network, you know that Billy was a nasty guy through and through. But he wanted to win. That's all that guy cared about, was winning. He would eat dirt if it meant he could win. And Buck learned under him. Now, we know that all the times the Mets got hit, especially from the Braves. I mean, losing Pete Alonso to that scary injury that he had, I'm shocked that his wrist wasn't broken when he got hit by Charlie Morton. And it really bothered me, and I know it bothered a lot of Met fans, that he said, well, Buck said, if you retaliate, what are you getting out of it? Well, first of all, it takes out another player. Maybe a player is out for the same amount of time. And I thought, well, I'm very surprised that he has had this attitude, considering that Billy was his mentor. And we know that, if you know Billy's reputation, like I said, if someone had hit Pete and Billy were the manager, Acuna would have went down. If Billy were the manager, not only would Acuna have gone down, but Matt Olson would have gone down as well. And probably Austin Riley. So this sort of nonsense of taking it and not standing up for yourselves. Obviously, and I talked about this a lot, this is an institutional franchise problem that they have to get out. David Stearns, that's one of the things David Stearns has got to get out of this organization, is this pussification of the New York Mets inside the front office, inside the clubhouse, and inside the manager's office. They have to get rid of that. I know that they've begun the process. They got rid of some of these Wilpon people. And I was thinking, well, I'm not going to talk about this, but anyway, those are the things the Mets are going to need to do going forward, just overall. I think they've begun the process of it, but they need to do more. And Buck did not help matters by not standing up for his players when a lot of them were getting hit. I got so sick and tired of him every time. It was cute last year, but at times you needed a more strong response than Buck being like this. Being mad all the time. They showed him being pissed off all the time. Hit somebody and let everyone in the ballpark know why a player has gotten hit. There's been no retaliation, and we have not seen that here. Any kind of retaliation in the form of not only hitting a player, but winning the game in 35 years. It's a long time. It's a long time. And it was those little things that bothered me about Buck, and that's why I didn't have necessarily a problem with him getting fired. I wanted him fired a while ago. He's a good man. He's a great baseball man. Hopefully he gets another job. I don't know at his age if he's going to get one, but he certainly is a great manager. So you don't have to necessarily win a World Series to be a great manager. There's a lot of bad managers that won World Series and are in the Hall of Fame, like Joe Torre. I'm just saying. All right, here are some of the candidates that are going to be discussed over the next few months, and then the next month or so, they'll have a manager. By the time we get into the week after the World Series, they'll have a manager here in place. But according to David Stearns, they are wide open, and behind the scenes, the reporters have said the Mets don't know yet who their manager is going to be. Obviously, with David Stearns coming in, he's got other things to process and put together. But here are some of the names we've heard. The big name we've heard is Craig Counsell, and he's the manager of the Brewers. Now, the word is that he likes being in Milwaukee. That doesn't surprise me. He played in Milwaukee. He played in Arizona. Those are not big markets. My biggest concern about Craig Counsell was how would he handle being in New York when he's been in a small market his whole career, and as a player as well. That concerns me greatly. It really, really does. And I guess he's from Wisconsin, so he's not a New York guy. I don't know how he can handle it here. It is very tough here to be in New York and to be a Mets manager here. So now he is a free agent after the season, so he is a guy to keep an eye on. Another guy to keep an eye on is his bench coach, Pat Murphy, who I guess he was up for the job when a few years ago when Buck got it. But he is 64 years old. I don't know if I want to bring in a guy that's 64 years old and he's never managed before, and you're bringing him into New York. That's a tough sell for me. And he's been a bench coach. What's he been doing all this time? It's like The Natural. Remember The Natural where they asked what's his face, Roy Hobbs, what you been doing all these years? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Here's a couple of names that the Mets have interviewed in the past. Matt Contrero, I guess he was one of the, he came down, maybe he was the last 5 guys. Joe Espada, longtime guy with the, now Contrero is the manager of the Royals. I don't know if I want him. And Joe Espada has been like the longtime bench coach for the Astros. He might be getting to a point where he might not be able to get a job. Another name out there, but I think he's going to go to San Francisco's Bob Melvin. I think Bob Melvin's going to leave San Diego. He's going to go to San Fran. Now here's some familiar names for us. Before we get into those familiar names, hit the subscribe button. And if you like this kind of stuff and like this video, let's go through a couple of familiar names. Eric Chavez. He was the hitting coach last year, and he's the bench coach now. Do you want to maybe bring in a bench coach of a team that lost 87, 88 games? I don't know. I don't know about that. You sure about that? I don't know about that. Another name, a name from the past, and he's with the Phillies right now. That's Kevin Long. Kevin Long has talked about for a long time of becoming a manager. He's very enthusiastic. I know one thing. He's a fiery guy. I would think, and he's not managed in a long time. I guess he managed in the minor leagues. I would think really long and hard on him. Obviously, another name for it is Dusty Baker. I mentioned him in the previous video. Dusty is older than Buck, but he is a manager. If he brought him in, they'd go to the playoffs next year. They might even win the division. That's how good of a manager Dusty is. And there's a couple interesting names, and really the last few names on this list that I have here. Joe McEwen, who's been a coach for a long time. And people have talked about him being a manager for a long time. He's currently with the Cardinals. He's with the Cardinals right now. So you would think the Cardinals are probably going to be making some moves there in terms of the personnel with the coaching staff. So McEwen might be available. I would talk to McEwen because he played here. Playing here is a big deal to me. I don't know about you. You can leave that in the comment section if you think that's a big deal. But being here in New York is very important to me. That's why I thought that Buck was a good choice, and he was a good choice at the time. And finally on this list, which is probably the most interesting name on this list, is Carlos Beltran, the once and future king of the New York Mets. Let me read you from MLB.com. The Mets have already hired Carlos Beltran as manager once, but he never spent a day in the dugout due to fallout from the sign stealing scandal that implicated him in Houston. Some around the organization were and still are skeptical of Beltran given his complete lack of managerial experience, but he does remain close with Epler, who hired him last year as a front office special assistant. As long as Beltran remains in the organization, he can't be dismissed as a potential factor. I would think Beltran will say, I'd like to interview for the job. What kind of manager would he be? Who the hell knows? Now, David Stearns did say during his press conference that he does not have a preference for experience over no experience. So this whole thing is wide open. It could be anybody. Could be the manager. A.J. Hinch of the Detroit Tigers could be the manager. Don't keep an eye on him because he was in Houston when David Stearns was in Houston, when he was the assistant general manager there. So that's another name to keep an eye on, and he's had success in the majors. He has won a World Series. And he might be getting tired of dealing with that monkey crap that's going on in Detroit. All that losing there. He might be getting really tired of it really fast. So these are the names of all the managers and all the guys that could be the manager of the New York Mets. Now they have to find a guy that's going to be here for the next 4 or 5 years. They can't be doing this carousel of managers in and out, in and out, in and out. And the longest they've been here is 2 years. We've not had a stable manager with the Mets since 2017. We've had 4 managers here. And I count Beltran that. 4 managers here in the last 6 years. How did that happen? This is one of the more better jobs in baseball, and it was prior to that, it was very stable in the front office, very stable on the field in the dugout. So you let me know what you think about this video. What do you think of these names? Did I miss it? And it's not Wally Backman. Wally is not going to be the manager of the Mets, even though he got let go by the Long Island Ducks. Get his name out of there. Now that I said it, people are going to write to me. We want Wally. Wally has problems. Don't make his problems your problems. Well, let me know what you think about this video. Of course, please subscribe to the Baseball Hut too. Thank you, and I'll see you later.